When it comes to Africa, Turkey means business. President Recep Tayyip Erdogan capping a three-nation tour with Nigeria, where the hard bargaining's about much more than commercial deals. After the success of Turkish-made drones in the war in Nagorno-Karabakh, arms sales certainly in the mix. We're going to ask about drone diplomacy and Erdogan's bid to take custody of Nigerian schools and universities run by the rival Gulenist movement, accused of orchestrating the failed 2016 coup in Turkey. We'll ask about Muslim world rivalries and, more broadly, what does Ankara have to offer Africa? A dynamic middle-income nation that builds its growth on building and infrastructure, all at competitive prices. But how does Turkey fare compared to former colonial powers, China, and growing rival Morocco? How reliable a partner at a time when Turkey's currency is reeling, inflation is soaring, and its banking transparency is coming under scrutiny? Can its leader of 18 years shape the conversation going into a December Turkey-Africa summit in Istanbul? Today in the France 24 debate, we're looking at Turkey's growing presence in Africa. With us, Federico Donelli, Research Fellow in International Relations at the University of Geneva, the author of Turkey in Africa. Thanks for being with us.
Good evening. Thank you for inviting me.
Also from Istanbul, journalist and columnist Barçın Yinanç. Thank you so much for being with us again as well.
Hello from Istanbul.
From Lagos, development consultant Najima Animashaun. How are you?
Good to be on your show.
And here in the studio with us, Emmanuel Iga, director of the Phobos International Consultancy. How have you been?
Very fine, thank you.
Very fine, that's good to know. The France 24 debate on Facebook and Twitter, hashtag F24debate. When Recep Tayyip Erdogan addressed the Angolan parliament Tuesday, he took aim at Africa's interlocutors of old, saying, quote, "The fate of humanity cannot and should not be left to the mercy of a handful of countries that were the victors of the Second World War." Let's have a bit more on Erdogan's trip with Ellen Gainsford.
Growing Turkey's footprint in Africa. President Erdogan is on a diplomatic tour, visiting Angola, Nigeria and Togo. The trip will include business forums linking up Turkish and local business people in each country. At a press conference in Istanbul before his departure, the Turkish leader was keen to boast of this growing relationship.
We're becoming Africa's leading trade partner. Our relations with African countries are not based on colonialism, and we want to succeed together with our brothers and sisters across the continent.
Angola's president, João Lourenço, has been looking for investment to help diversify his country's economy, which is currently very oil-reliant. Turkey's presence in Africa has dramatically increased over the past 20 years. In 2003, Turkey had 12 embassies and invested $100 million annually, while in 2021 this has risen to 42 embassies and $6.5 billion in investment. Following in China's footsteps, Ankara has also made its presence felt on the continent through large infrastructure projects, including a national mosque in Ghana, East Africa's largest indoor arena in Rwanda, and a railway project in Ethiopia. By the end of his trip, Erdogan will have visited 30 African countries since 2004. The visit comes ahead of two major events: the Turkey-Africa Business Summit later in October and the third Turkey-Africa Summit in December, aimed at further solidifying Ankara's ties with the continent.
So, Federico Donelli, this isn't a passing fancy. Turkey's been developing its brand and its relations over decades. What's your feeling on the fact of the timing of this particular tour?
This particular tour, I believe, is related to the third African-Turkey summit in December, because I believe that the President Erdogan wants to prepare the ground for this summit. Every time that Turkey hosts a summit with African countries is the beginning of new stage in Turkish policy toward Africa. And I still think that the new phase, the new stage that Turkey wants to open is related to the security dimension. That is something almost new, as you mentioned, about the drone, the Turkish-made drone. And these Turkish-made drones are becoming even more a sort of bargaining chip with African countries because they are very high quality drone and they are cheaper than Western-made drone. So for many African countries, I mean Morocco, Nigeria, Rwanda maybe, and Ethiopia, they are a good for them, for their security apparatus.
Very good for the security apparatus, and that brings us squarely to the issue of Nigeria. Its national security priority currently, you could say, is domestic. The week began with 43 killed when gunmen attacked a village market in President Buhari's home state of Sokoto. The attack in Goronyo, just the latest in a string of grim killings and kidnappings for ransom across the north and the middle belt. Since last month, Nigerian troops have been conducting air and ground operations against bandit camps in neighboring Zamfara state, whose governor, Bello Mohammed Matawale, returned from a trip to the UK and Turkey, saying he'd secured a deal to acquire first-class drones, as he put it, to help hunt those bandits. Najim Animashaun, your thoughts on how drones will help in the fight against those who've been kidnapping for ransom?
Well, I think it's an interesting development. And I know Governor Matawale has been very frustrated about the inability of the Nigerian security forces to secure the lives and properties of people in his state. If I may just go back 1 second, the recent killings in Sokoto state is in a state that is near the president's state, but it's not quite the president's state. The president is from Katsina, and they have a level of banditry. They have a level of banditry there that is probably worse than it is in Sokoto state. Going back to the cooperation on defense, and in particular the availability of Turkish drones, this will probably have a substantial impact. Not long ago, in the last 3 or 4 weeks, the Nigerian military, the Nigerian National Communications Commission, that is the people who run our cell phones and our cell phone towers, shut down cell phone services to Zamfara and Sokoto and parts of Katsina in order to allow the military to flush out the bandits. However, that was as burdensome on the citizenry trying to get help as it was difficult for the militants to actually communicate. So these drones will probably provide a level of technological support to the military could be substantial in terms of locating and eliminating.
Yeah, and your reaction, Emmanuel Iga, to the fact that it's the governor of a state who's going out and doing his own arms purchases, not the federal government.
Well, I think Nigerians have kind of got used to that. The federal government doesn't really seem to have a solution. The Nigerian army seems to be kind of overtaken by this insecurity situation. And quite a number of generals have called on the people to rise up to defend themselves. And many states...
Yeah, they've enlisted these self-defense vigilante groups.
Exactly. So the vigilante groups are, cropping up here and there in the north, south, etc. And what's happening is many governors have understood, because they do have substantial autonomy, substantial powers, the governors in Nigeria, to take this kind of initiative, as the governor of Zamfara has done. Defense and security normally should be in the hands of the federal government, but if governors can go out and get some agreements for cooperation, etc.
And Turkish drones will be a game changer?
Well, it depends on how the drones are used on the ground. And I don't really see the governor of Zamfara bringing the drones to be under his command in Zamfara state. Somehow they are going to, at a point, work some collaboration out with the Nigerian defense authorities for these drones to be supervised, to be operated under the control of the Nigerian army, which should be the normal thing. So let's see how that goes. Drone technology is not just, okay, you're somewhere in a control room and you're pressing buttons and you're getting the... Now, you need intelligence to be able to locate where these troublemakers are and locate them properly, very, very well located by GPS before you can send your drones, so that you avoid unnecessary collateral damages. There's a lot of complications involved in using drones.
Yeah, your reaction on that, Najim Mashoun?
I think the professor has made a very, very interesting point, a very valid one. In Nigeria, there are quite stringent rules as to drone ownership. The governor would have to justify to the national security agencies how he's going to be able to import them. I doubt the Turkish government or the Turkish military would be able to sell these drones directly to the governor of Zamfara state without going through a government-to-government transaction. After all, this is military hardware. The only body that is entitled to acquire weapons is the federal government. And then from the federal government, they can be deployed to some of the states. That said, the governors, in this particular case, Governor Matawale, is actually the chief security officer of his state. So security of the state is his responsibility. And part of the Nigerian budget that is devoted to states is called the security vote, or the security budget, which is given to the governor's office. It's a bit of a slush fund. It's very opaque. Nobody knows what they tend to do with it. And we're not sure whether some of it gets applied to the vigilantes and the militias that are being used. I would like to mention one point, though, which I think is very, very interesting in terms of Turkey, is that Zamfara state, which is asked for these drones, is one of the largest producing gold producing states in Nigeria. It's actually the biggest gold producing state in Nigeria. And we do know that some of the artisanal miners' gold that is mined in Zamfara makes its way to Turkey to be refined. Most of it goes to Dubai, but some of it goes to Turkey. Now, there are significant concerns with the security or in Zamfara that is linked to the banditry, that is also linked to opportunistic crimes against artisanal miners, as well as organized criminal mining groups. So this is a very interesting development in Zamfara if those are deployed. But I do think that the Turks are coming in, particularly President Erdogan, is coming in at an opportune time for Turkey, in that there is a little bit of, politically, there's a little bit of apprehension as to where does Nigeria go next in terms of its foreign policies and its allies. Its traditional allies in the West, which really are symbolized by the major oil companies, are divesting at a fairly rapid rate from Nigeria.
Yeah, let me pick up, Najim, let me pick up on that point in a moment. But first, I want to get the reactions of Federico and Barchin on this. I'll begin with you, Federico. First of all, the fact that Zamfara state is a gold-producing state. Recently we've been watching the news out of Mali, where in exchange, perhaps, it hasn't been sealed yet, this deal, for the presence of Russian mercenaries, there would be some kind of barter with Malian gold. Would you see some kind of a barter system or an exclusive access to Nigerian gold for Turkey if the drone deal is sealed?
No, I don't see any exclusive access for Turkish companies, but what I see is that Turkey wants to to increase the economic trade, and Turkey main concern is related to the mining sectors, but also to the energy sectors. We have to consider that almost the 90% of the export from Nigeria to Turkey is related to liquefied gas and to oil. So I believe that in Turkish mind, the idea is also to diversify his energy suppliers, and Nigeria could be a good asset in the future. So I think that they main concern with energy sector.
Barcin Yinanç, you heard Federico at the outset saying that the game changer compared to past visits by the Turkish president to Africa is this stepped up focus on security. Is that how it's being portrayed where you are, this visit?
No, not at all. Actually, I think President Erdogan's Africa visit attracts more attention in Europe than Turkey. We rarely have any debates about Turkey's position in Africa. I have never come across debates like that, except in the European televisions. But indeed, maybe the difference is that the drone issue has been introduced to Erdogan's policies or overtures to Africa. But let me remind that Turkey's pivot to Africa hasn't started with Erdogan. Actually, it has started even before Erdogan. But President Erdogan has given his a lot of energy. And coming to this episode, as far as the timing is concerned, obviously this comes at a time when the Turkish drones have registered considerable success. There is a demand from different countries, from even from Pakistan, Bangladesh, not just from African countries. At the end of the day, you cannot sell something unless there is a demand. And the success of these Turkish-made drones have proven themselves in terrains like Libya, Syria. My understanding is that I'm not a defense expert, but they are good in asymmetric warfare, and I guess that is the case for the African nations as well. But having said that, it would be wrong to just limit the discussion to the fact that Turkey wants to, sell drones. On the contrary, I think there is a lot of other areas of cooperation that could be consolidated. As the previous speaker underlined, Turkey buys LNG from Nigeria, and a long-term contract was due to expire this year. So I can imagine that Erdogan was also trying to negotiate a deal on LNG purchases in view of the energy crisis that has started to shake Europe as well as Turkey. So it's not just the security element that is a priority, but the Turkish side would try to seek to diversify and consolidate its trade ties with the nations is concerned.
Yeah, and it's not just business ties that are being discussed in Nigeria. More on that when we come back. Stay with us. You're watching the France 24 debate. Welcome back, or welcome if you're just joining us. It's the France 24 debate. We're looking at Recep Tayyip Erdogan's visit to Africa. With us to talk about it, Federico Donelli, Research Fellow in International Relations at the University of Geneva. Your latest book, Turkey in Africa. Also on the banks of the Bosphorus, journalist and columnist Barcin Yinanç is back with us as well. From Lagos development consultant Najim Animashaun. And here in the studio, we're joined by Emmanuel Iga, international policy consultant, director of Phobos International, the consultancy. We have seen that on his trips, on this trip as well, Recep Tayyip Erdogan has been talking business, but he's also been discussing politics. In Togo, his previous stop, Erdogan thanking his hosts for the fight against Gulenists, supporters of Fethullah Gulen, who's the cleric who's exiled and based in Pennsylvania and accused of masterminding the failed July 2016 coup against Erdogan. Ahead of his trip to Abuja, there was speculation on the Turkish president whether he was to ask for the shutting of Nile University, that's in Abuja, as well as or you might say custodianship over other educational institutions run by Gulenists on the Turkish president, who hammered home the point when he met with his Nigerian counterpart.
As you know, we have been fighting various terrorist organizations in Turkey for many years, especially the PKK, PYD, FETÖ, Daesh, We continue to share necessary information with the Nigerian authorities about the illegal activities carried out in Nigeria by Feto, the perpetrator of the treacherous coup attempt on July 15.
Najim Meshaun, how much mileage is Erdogan getting when it comes to taking over control of those institutions from those Gulenist-run institutions?
I think the best progress made so far is Nigeria kind of accepting to get those universities to change their appellation. Turkish Nile University was Turkish Nile University. It's now called Nile University. They knocked off Turkey from it because there was kind of confusion that with Turkey in the name, it sounds like it's a Turkish government-backed institution, which was not the case. These are institutions that are run precisely by Erdogan's first opponent, Abdullah Gulen. So that's the main thing that has been done. But I don't think Erdogan will succeed in asking the universities or institutions generally to be transferred to Turkish government per se. These are institutions that have been built, set up with the cooperation of some Nigerian organizations, sometimes Nigerian Islamic organizations that have probably certain agreements with the sponsor. And Nigeria would want to keep its sovereignty and show its independence in allowing whoever to come to operate legally an educational establishment in Nigeria. So the only thing Turkey or Turkish government can do is to ask for authorization to set up properly Turkish government-run or sponsored institutions, alongside the Fethullah Abdullah Gulen's institutions, which I don't think anybody can ask Nigeria to throw away just like that.
And Najim Meshaun, you agree President Buhari won't blink on this one?
Yes, I think it'll be difficult for the president to accede to this demand. I think there will be other areas where the president can probably assist in the so-called battle against terrorism. There are two quick vignettes that I would like to share on this point. The first is that Nigeria is host to a number of Turkish exiles and refugees. At the last count, I believe we have about 250,000 Turks living in Nigeria, of which about 1% of them, or 100 or so, 1,000 or so, are refugees. So there may be one or two people that the Nigerian government may want to interrogate and maybe even extradite. But regarding those institutions, I don't think that there's going to get much mileage out of them. Those institutions have been very sensitive and changed their names, as the previous speaker said. And some of them are better performing academic institutions in Nigeria. So it'll be difficult for the government.
Najim Meshaun, we're going to interrupt you just briefly. Maybe if you could use a headset because we're having audio issues. Apologies for the technical problems there. We'll try to cross right back to you. Yeah, and just to show the intent of Turkey, Gulen's nephew was detained in Kenya's capital, Nairobi, where he lives. That was back in May before re-emerging in custody back in Turkey. He's now charged with being a member of the banned group. At the time, Kenyan authorities stayed tight-lipped on whether they extradited Selahattin Gulen or whether he was abducted by Turkish secret services. Barçın Yinanç, the Turkish authorities are so resolute, it seems, on this issue still. How resolute?
Well, they are very resolute because for President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, Gülen movement represents an existential threat. It's a fact that he came to power and he remained in power thanks to the alliance he forged with the Gulen movement. The thing is, Gulen movement couldn't live and survive in Turkey before Erdogan's arrival because the staunchly secularist governments wouldn't let Gulen movement flourish in Turkey. So what they did was to organize abroad. What happened is that when there was this power struggle between Erdogan and the Gulen movement, and when the two broke up, there was this real war. In 2016, when there was this failed coup attempt, Erdogan got the legal, let's say, the justification to ask all over the world that these schools, for instance, be closed down. But obviously, the problem here is 20 years ago, it was the very same Erdogan who went to these countries and asked them to facilitate the activities of the Gulen movement. Whereas, you know, after 20 years, now he's saying they were the good guys, but now they are the bad guys. So he has a problem of convincing. But the thing is, while, as I said, he sees them as existential threat because he believes they try to topple, the secular segments of the Turkish society as well perceive a threat from Gulen movement. So in case there would be a change in government in Turkey, and we have elections coming 2023, and in case there would be a secularist government, I think that government, whoever would succeed Erdogan, they will continue to put pressure on countries all over the world who are harboring Gulen movements that they should be that their activities should be limited. So this is not just a case limited to Erdogan as well.
It's other movements as well. Federico Donelli, when you heard earlier Najimani Mashaun mention the political refugees that live in Nigeria, of course, they're not all Gulenists.
Yeah, I would like to add something, because we are talking about the Gulenist problems as just a security issue, but of course is a very top priority in terms of security for the Turkish authority. But at the same time, when we talk about Turkey's policy to Africa, we have to consider that the Gulenist movements and the Gulenist institution were the principal actor in terms of public diplomacy during the opening phase of the opening period of Turkish policy to Africa. So nowadays, the biggest problem for Turkey is trying to, in some way, to build a new public diplomacy for towards African countries. And this is not something very easy, because the Gulenist movement was, and still in some part of Africa, as Western Africa, is still very well networked on the ground.
Yeah,
I think that
their schools had a good reputation for being well run. If today the Gulenists are no longer the arm of soft power, if you will, of Ankara, then what is?
Nowadays, they are still working, of course, underground in some cases. In other cases, they are just changing the name of the foundation or schools. But of course, for Ankara, the problem is that the Gulenist propaganda could be a sort of we can say a threat in terms of jeopardize the gains that Turkey achieved on African continent.
Najimani Mashaun, you have this domestic dispute inside of Turkey. When you're looking at it from Africa, what do you think?
I think the Turkish government, just to add to what your previous speaker said, the Turkish government signed an agreement. One of the 7 agreements they signed with the Nigerian government was one for youth development and education. And I think what they're trying to do is, through a series of scholarships and exchanges, probably try to provide an alternative view of Turkey to the one that the Gulenists have with their educational institutions in Africa. I can tell you that they're quite generous with their scholarships, as I know several people who've been on them. This will take time, but it will certainly create an alternative view of Turkey and ambassadors for Turkey who will be coming back from Turkey and northern Cyprus. with educational qualifications, or teachers and educators who come to Nigeria teach in Nigerian institutions. So that's one of the ways I believe they're going to be doing their public and their soft diplomacy. The other area that I think they're going to be highlighting the relationship between the soft power between Nigeria and Turkey is the historical links. During the Caliphate, during the Sultanate, many of these institutions that the Gulenists actually established were predate them, in the sense that there were institutions that were established during the colonial era in Nigeria to counteract the missionary schools. We're talking about the 1890s here. And the earliest mosques in places like Lagos were built with grants from the Sultan. So there is a long history in this tradition that has been done, and the Gulenists are just building upon that history. And they've done it very successfully, and I suspect the Turkish government's probably going to try and do the same thing over the next 3 to 5 years to try and get more traction. It will be interesting to see what's in the youth and education agreements that they've signed with the Nigerian government. If the focus of the education is on primary education in those areas that have not been educated in Nigeria, where there are the highest rates of illiteracy, particularly in the north, then that can have a substantial impact, because the Gulenist schools tend to focus on the elites, those with the funds to actually pay for the tuition. So it can watch this space. It will be interesting to see how it pans out.
Yeah, if they can provide education for those who don't have the means to pay for tuition. Emmanuel Iga, this brings us back to what we heard Recep Tayyip Erdogan say Tuesday when he was in Luanda, Angola's capital, and that is, the fate of humanity cannot and should not be at the handful of the mercy of a few countries that won World War II. So you have, for Nigeria, this diversification, if you will, of go-to partners from the rest of the world. You and I have talked in the past about China, of course, well beyond the former colonial power Britain and the United States. What does Turkey bring, in your view, to Nigeria and to Africa?
Well, what I think we should read in between the lines of that declaration by Recep Erdogan. You see, there is a lot of debate going on in the United Nations regarding the reform of the Security Council. The 5 members or permanent members of the Security Council, I think, are the people that
are those victors of World War II that he's talking about.
They are the people he has in mind. And there is a host of countries that no longer accept the dominance by that group of 5, and they are challenging it. And Turkey is one of them. One of the ways they are suggesting that the issue be addressed is to open up the Security Council permanent membership to other countries that have down the line become actually very powerful or strong regional powers, like not only Turkey, which is now a strong regional power in Europe. You have India, Japan, Germany, which is even just nearby here. These are countries that are very, very strong in economy, militarily, etc., and are contributing heavily to the United Nations. So, and Nigeria, particularly in Africa, is aspiring, should there be an opening up of the permanent security membership in the Council, the Security Council, is aspiring to be the country that will represent Africa in that new arrangement. So I see what Turkey is trying to say, being to garner support from Africa for this necessary reform of the United Nations Security Council. And that's how I interpret it.
And Federico Donelli, when Turkey looks at a map of Africa, does it kind of cut it in two between countries that are part of the Arab world and those that are in sub-Saharan Africa? I'm thinking of countries where it's had in the past allies as part of the International Muslim Brotherhood, like Sudan, like Egypt, where now its friends from the past are in the opposition.
Yeah, that's a good point, and this is also why Turkey between 2017 2020 tried to adopt a different approach to Africa, especially with some countries like Sudan. With the overthrow of Omar al-Bashir, Turkey decided to adopt a wait-and-see approach, and at the same time try to also, for other reasons related to the crisis around Turkey, like Syria and of course Nagorno-Karabakh, Turkey decided to cut some resources, and this is the most important things in the future, in the upcoming future, because the main risk of current Turkish policy in Africa is to overstretch, so to move further its own capabilities. So
let me bring in Najim Animashaun on this, because when you compare with 20 years ago or 30 years ago, you see the diversification of partners for sub-Saharan African nations. Again, we've talked a lot about China, but it's also countries like Morocco, which more and more are doing business. Who's Turkey's main rival, you might say, right now in West Africa?
He is not really trying to rival anybody in West Africa. I think they're looking for the niches where they can play, and they want a more muscular foreign policy where they can add value to the countries that they're trying to support. So, for example, the 7 agreements that they signed in Nigeria focus on as much on Nigeria's needs as on Turkey's aspirations. So in Nigeria, we need a new partner for energy. Somebody to take our gas, because nobody's going to take our gas, and we need funds for infrastructure development for our gas. Turkey is ready to provide some of that. It can't do it all by itself, but then it can probably ally with the Chinese to do it, and that gives it leverage. We're also looking at mining, and Turkey's interested in mining, and both Turkey and Morocco are operating in the northwest of Nigeria, which is where Zamfara and Sokoto are. So I don't think it's an either-or for them. I think they're playing this quite prudently, and they seem to be playing the Islamic card judiciously, in the sense that Nigeria and Turkey are members of OIC, and where they are working in a country where there's a Muslim majority, they tend to work softly with that. Where they're working in a country that is not a Muslim majority, they have other priorities. So, I'm looking at their foreign policy from a distance, and I'm thinking that they're being fairly skillful about going into space, going into areas where spaces are emerging. As I said earlier, as I started saying earlier, because the Western countries and the Western oil companies are pulling out, this is an opportunity for Turkey to be moving in and solidifying
its position. Barcin Yinanç, before we go, I'm haunted by what you said in part 1 about how the visit of a Turkish president to Africa is not a subject of discussion or debate where you are in Istanbul. Will it be so when you have those African leaders arriving for that summit in December?
Well, Turkey is in such a region in turmoil that, developments in Syria, in Iraq, in Iran, relations with Russia, or even with Greece can take priority over the summit. So I won't be able to tell you whether enough attention will be given. But if there is a general calm in Turkey, if there is no other stories, still, I'm not sure the Africa summit would make such big headlines. As I said, there are so many other priorities from Syria to Russia that it's not really on the agenda of the press, I would say, honestly. If you go around and ask people, where exactly are some of the countries of Africa, some of the people in Turkey, simple citizens wouldn't even be able to say. So I think the government is going ahead of the civil society, but obviously the Turkish business circles are extremely interested. They are trying to discover more and more Africa. And the academia is also coming from behind. I can't say there are a lot of a big number of academics in Turkey working on Africa. It's starting in baby steps, honestly.
All right. Well, thankfully, Federico Donelli is one of them. Thank you so much for joining us from Istanbul. Thank you to Barchin Yinanç as well. I want to thank Najimani Mashaun for being with us from Lagos. Emmanuel Iga, thank you for being with us here in the France 24 debate.